Welcome to the Deep Dive, powered by the Kenya Wantam Notam Movement, the KWM podcast.
It's great to be here.
What we try to do here is take these really complex national conversations, cut through all the political noise.
All rhetoric.
Exactly, and just give you the essential distilled knowledge you need to be an active, informed citizen.
And today, we have a topic that really gets to the heart of some major Kenyan policy debates.
We really do. We're deep diving into a political confrontation that has exposed some of the most critical fractures in our national policy.
We're talking about the tension between academic merit and historical equity, and maybe most importantly, the accountability of just vast sums of public funds.
Indeed. And this isn't just some minor squabble between leaders. This is a really high-stakes disagreement.
It is. It moves so fast from what you might call a Cold War to an outright live fire exchange.
And the core of this controversy, it involves a public showdown between a former deputy president, who we'll be referring to as the XDP or Gachagua, and a group of elected leaders from Kenya's Northeastern region, the NE region.
And the trigger for all of this, it seems almost simple on the surface. It was the controversial placements for students who are entering grade 10 national schools.
Just a flashpoint. But from that one point in education, it just escalated into this huge, comprehensive debate over national priorities.
It really did.
We've gone through all the source material, and it's a very detailed transcript of this public back and forth. And it is just rich with specific claims, massive financial figures, and some really powerful anecdotes.
So our mission today is pretty structured. We're going to systematically unpack three interconnected, extremely high-stakes national policy areas, all through the lens of this one conflict.
Okay, what are they?
So first, we have to dissect this fundamental tension between the merit system and the quota system and national school admissions. It's a debate that's, as old as the nation itself.
Right, merit versus affirmative action.
Exactly. Second, we have to look critically at the impact and the accountability of the massive devolution funding that's been happening over the last 13 years.
Okay.
Specifically, targeting those regions that still claim marginalization. And that leads to the third point.
Which is?
We need to address this crucial, defining question for modern Kenya. What exactly defines genuine marginalization 13 years after the rollout of devolution?
These are fundamental questions for Kenya's future. And the source material really forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths, I think, about resource management and political representation.
The XDP, he frames this whole thing as a classic showdown between public accountability on one side
and on the other,
perceived political entitlement. It's an intellectual goldmine, really, for anyone who wants to understand the operational challenges of devolution.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
So the atmosphere, as it's described in the sources, it was tense right from the very beginning.
Immediately tense.
And it seems the NE leaders, led by Farah Malam, they decided to make the first big political move here.
They absolutely did. They turned what was a localized issue about grade 10 placements into a full-blown national political scandal, and they aimed it squarely at the XDP.
How did they do that?
Well, they used a classic political strategy. They stood in front of the cameras, launched a very direct strike, and they portrayed their community as the latest victims of what they called the XDP's alleged tribal antics.
Wow, so they went straight for the tribalism angle.
Straight for it. The specific charge, as it's documented in the transcript, was that the XDP was stalking division through incendiary comments. It's an immediate, high-stakes political escalation.
And the goal there is to frame his critique of the quota system before he even really makes it.
Precisely. They're trying to say it's solely motivated by tribal regionalism.
And it's crucial here that any leaders went even further to give this accusation a deeper context, historically.
They did. They reminded the public that this current grumbling over school placements, it wasn't some isolated event.
They linked it back to previous controversial remarks made by the XDP.
That's right. Specifically, some earlier suggestions that his businesses, the transcript actually says his Lee businesses, were built on what he called foreign fraud.
So the strategy is clear. They're trying to establish a pattern.
A pattern of the XDP being prone to controversial, maybe divisive, and even questionable rhetoric. The goal is to undermine his credibility on this specific policy issue before the debate even starts.
And that framing, it puts the XDP on the defensive immediately, right? Regarding identity politics.
Immediately. So if he was going to respond effectively, he couldn't just deny the charge of being a tribalist. He had to. He had to flip the entire narrative.
And that's exactly what he did.
It is. His counterpunch was swift, it was powerful, and you could argue pretty successful in redirecting the whole public conversation.
He called the leaders prouds.
Yes, prouds.
Which is such an interesting word. It suggests arrogance or misplaced self-regard, a sense of entitlement.
And in doing that, he dramatically shifted the focus of the debate away from tribalism and onto accountability.
Which is a brilliant political move.
It is. The XDP's response was a full-on counter-accusation. He essentially argued, you leaders are quick to cry tribalism or marginalization.
Right.
Yet you are the ones who are responsible for the current state of underdevelopment in your own regions.
Because, he alleges, you have looted the vast funds that were allocated for your counties.
Exactly. So your failure to provide high-quality institutions is the real problem here, not my critique of the quota system.
He just shifted the burden of proof entirely. Now it's on the NE leaders to explain the disparity between this massive funding and the poor outcomes.
And to really appreciate the intensity of this flashpoint, we have to understand the historical context that the NE leaders themselves were using to define national schools.
Because that forms the basis of their defense for the current admission system.
Yes, they lay out a very clear historical mandate for these schools. The sources emphasize that many of them, the famous ones like Alliance, Storey, Mungu, they were initially built by colonial governments.
And then meticulously maintained and resourced after independence.
Right, so they view these institutions not as local community assets, but as foundational pillars of the nation itself.
Their intended role, as the NE leaders argue, was and still is to be centers of academic excellence for the entire nation.
And that's why they were financed so generously. They got superior labs, better classrooms, more equipment.
Specifically to accommodate students from all across the country.
And here's the critical part: to advance the notion of national cohesion.
National cohesion. That concept is key.
It's everything to their argument. It implies that students from different regions, different tribes, different socioeconomic backgrounds should all mix and learn together.
And build a unified national identity.
Exactly. So from the NE leaders' perspective, these national schools are designed to promote a national fusion. So if that's the mandate, then criticizing the admission system based on regional proximity, as the XDP is doing, could be seen as undermining that core national function.
And this just sets up the policy paradox perfectly. Well, if the constitutional goal of the national school system is to foster national unity, how much regional balancing, the quota system, is actually necessary to achieve that unity?
And where does the insistence on a local advantage, even for these super high-performing students, begin to erode that national mixing mandate?
That's the question.
Right. And the XDP, he doesn't deny the importance of national cohesion. Instead, he pivots. He asks, if these are truly national institutions, then fairness and merit have to apply uniformly.
Not just regionally, but also locally, where the schools are actually domiciled.
Yes. He argues that the spirit of national excellence is being betrayed, not by the concept of quotas, but by the abuse of quotas.
Especially when the alleged beneficiaries of these quotas are students with significantly lower marks.
So the question is no longer about cohesion. It's about whose standard of excellence is going to prevail.
And that takes us directly into the heart of the XDP's immediate grievance: the alleged denial of opportunity to local high-achieving students. The XDP is very, very clear on his position here, and this is where I think his argument gains a lot of traction with Kenyan parents, people who really value academic performance.
He starts with a very simple premise.
All children in Kenya deserve equal treatment, and fundamental fairness, anchored in academic merit, must govern placement. It's a simple, powerful idea.
It is. And it's absolutely essential that we analyze the nuance of his claim correctly here.
What do you mean?
He's aware that if he just calls for an end to national schools taking students from other regions, he'll be seen as tribal. So he explicitly clarifies this. He says, and I'm quoting from the source, "I have not insisted, and I cannot, that children of a certain area must go to schools where those schools are domiciled." No.
That is a critical distinction.
It's the whole point.
So the argument is not against students from, say, Mandera going to Alliance High School.
Not at all. The argument is that where the schools are domiciled in places like Wote or Nyeri, the children from that immediate area who have reached that exceptionally high qualification must be given an opportunity.
It's about recognizing academic merit and logistical common sense.
Right, especially for day schools, within the school's local cluster.
So the specific grievance is that this current centralized system is denying these highly qualified local kids their choice.
Allegedly in favor of students from other areas who have achieved substantially lower marks.
And this is where the powerful specific anecdotes that the XDP shares, this is where they provide the real emotional weight for his policy critique.
Absolutely.
Let's actually detail these claims because they are probably the most memorable part of the transcript and they resonate so deeply with the anxiety parents feel during admissions season.
And he based these claims on direct calls he says he received from desperate parents. Parents who felt the system had just betrayed their children's hard work.
The most potent example he offers is the case of the Wote child.
This one is powerful.
We are talking about a student from the Wote area who achieved a score of 71 out of a possible 72 marks.
Just think about that. That is a performance that is bordering on flawless academic perfection.
It's incredible. And the claim is that Alliance High School is located just meters away from the Wote area, and this child had applied for and qualified for the school under the correct cluster.
And
yet, this child was allegedly denied placement at Alliance.
The implication of that is just massive.
A near-perfect student living right next to one of the nation's premier institutions is rejected.
And this leads directly to the shocking inequality claim he makes.
Right. The XDP alleges that children from other areas with scores as low as 50 marks
50?
Were admitted to these very same prestigious institutions. That is a 21-point disparity between the highest achieving rejected student and the alleged lower achieving admitted student.
That colossal gap, if it's true, it does more than just question the fairness of the quota system. It raises really serious doubts about the credibility of the entire centralized placement mechanism.
It suggests a scenario where, political influence or corruption or just some administrative decree prioritizing geography has completely overridden the principle of academic excellence.
The principle of equal treatment seems fundamentally violated when a child with a 98.6% score is denied a spot meters from their home. It's just hard to defend.
And he says this wasn't an isolated case.
No. He says he was inundated with calls. The source material actually lists several other locations where parents reported similar denials of opportunity for their qualified children.
Kaminga High School in Tanzania, Mukumacho School in Kui, and St. Charles Wangazika High School.
Now, the exact spellings of those locations might be, local vernacular or maybe slightly off in the source transcript, but the message is crystal clear.
This is a systematic, nationwide problem affecting many schools.
So the policy question we really have to wrestle with here is this conflict between equity and excellence.
And the XDP's solution is absolute.
It is. Placement must be based purely on merit for all children of Kenya. He views the denial of opportunity to a qualified, high-achieving child, especially one who met all the requirements, as just inherently unfair.
His demand isn't for regional protectionism.
No, it's for the restoration of a singular high academic standard that's applied uniformly across the whole country, where qualifications are respected above everything else.
It's a compelling argument. Especially for the upwardly mobile middle class who see education as the only real equalizer.
Of course. If your child works tirelessly to get a 71 out of 72, only to be denied a local spot by someone with a 50, the entire system feels rigged.
And this crisis of merit, it sets the stage perfectly for the XDP's next pivot.
Which is to link this educational failure directly to the alleged financial failure of the local leaders in those northeastern regions.
Right. He's essentially saying, if you insist on using affirmative action to place students with 50 marks in Alliance, you are tacitly admitting that the schools in their home areas are inadequate.
And if they're inadequate, why? After 13 years of devolution, why has the massive influx of funds not fixed them?
And that bridge links education policy directly to financial accountability.
Which is where the conversation gets truly explosive.
Before we dive into the massive funding figures that truly underpin this debate, and these are figures that bring the entire argument about marginalization into sharp focus, we need to take a quick pause for reflection and for some resources.
I trust you're enjoying this deep dive and learning a lot. Understanding the context of these policy conflicts and, the financial flows is just so crucial for holding our leaders accountable.
For more great resources, we invite you to visit wantamnotem.com. And we really want to urge you to download this free e-resource. Kenya's Gen Z must reclaim their power. It's available as an ebook and an audio format.
Remember, it is free.
Read it. Take action. Tell your friends to go to wantumnotem.com, create an account, and download the free ebook audio. Again, it is free. Take action. Freedom never comes easy. What will you do?
Additionally, you can find more free downloads and resources or buy resources at https://beacons.aktk2020buybooks. And if you want to join the national conversation, you can change Kenya by starting to comment and post your thoughts. Just create your account and start posting your comments at https://wantumnotem.com.
You should also follow us and engage with the community on our Facebook page. That's https://www.facebook.com/Kenyambetuko Pamoja. And remember, you can listen to and enjoy the KWM podcast, The Deep Dive, wherever you are.
At home, in the office, on the road, in private cars, buses, or even the matatus, the public transport vehicles that keep our cities moving. Find us at https://rss.com/podcast. Skenya-wantum-noten movement-kilobiaman.
Okay, now let's get back to the billions and the stunning development paradox that is facing Kenya.
Right. This next section really represents the XDP's strongest political defense because he uses verifiable financial data to attack the entire premise of continued marginalization.
He frames this core conflict as a kind of development paradox.
A paradox that just defies logic.
His claim is intentionally blunt. He says that since the advent of devolution back in 2013, billions upon billions of Kenyan shillings have been pumped into northeastern Kenya.
Billions. Yet the region remains conspicuously underdeveloped. And the crucial twist in his argument is that this failure is not because of national neglect. Central government set the money.
But as he alleges, it's because the local leaders have systematically eaten the budget or just completely mismanaged the funds.
And this is where we need to just pause and absorb the sheer scale of the financial allocation. The 2010 Constitution and devolution were explicitly designed to address historical neglect through resource allocation.
And these massive funding totals we're about to present, they are the XDP's foundational evidence for his claim that the resources have been more than sufficient to achieve parity.
So let's lay out the hard data from the source. We are talking about colossal amounts of taxpayer money flowing into just 4 key northeastern counties over the past decade.
And let's just take a moment to absorb the magnitude of these figures. For Mandera County,
119 billion Kenya shillings.
Wow. Wajir County,
99.6 billion Kenya shillings.
Garissa County,
81.7 billion.
and Mandera County,
76.83 billion Kenya shillings.
Let's focus on Mandera for a second. 119 billion shillings.
It's a staggering figure. I mean, to give you some context, that amount is comparable to the entire annual budgets of some smaller nations.
And that money was meant to transform services, healthcare, infrastructure, and critically, education.
And this is why the XDP's argument becomes so compelling. This massive allocation was supposed to make the term marginalized obsolete. He says it very clearly. They have the opportunity to develop institutions of the highest standards possible in Kenya, not just for the children of those areas, but for the children of Kenya.
This sets up that critical conflict perfectly, the claim of neglect versus the claim of mismanagement.
Right. He's arguing that with that level of funding, they should have built their own equivalent of Alliance High School in Mandera or Wajir.
Staffed with quality teachers, equipped with modern labs.
But he uses his personal experience as deputy president traveling to those regions as evidence of the failure. He claims that despite this massive funding, he traveled there, and he just did not see any substantial institutions that were developed in a way that was commensurate with that investment.
Which contrasts sharply with the visible, large-scale infrastructure projects that billions are meant to fund.
Exactly. And then he presents this stark comparison to really drive the point home.
He notes that counties that have received less money,
specifically citing Western Kenya, the Rift Valley, and the mountain region.
they show beautiful institutions when you visit them.
This is not just some casual observation. It's a direct challenge to the accountability model. If Region A gets less money and produces visible infrastructure, while Region B gets over 100 billion and produces little, the failure isn't in the allocation.
It's in the leadership.
And this critique of local governance is hammered home even further by what the source calls the absentee leadership allegation.
The XDP expresses what sounds like genuine shock that these northeastern leaders allegedly maintain such a weak physical presence in the counties they're supposed to be governing.
The anecdote here is not just colorful. From his perspective, it's damning proof of a profound disconnect.
He recalls that any time he had an official trip to Garissa or Mandera or Wajir when he was DP, the regional leaders would demand space on his official aircraft to travel with him to the county.
Right, which you might expect.
But crucially, they would travel back with him to Nairobi on the very same day.
And that reinforces the claim that they are not on the ground. They're not maintaining a physical working presence to oversee governance.
I mean, if a leader only stays as long as the deputy president is visiting, how can they effectively monitor the deployment of a 119 billion shilling budget?
They can't. And this institutional vacuum, the XDP argues, is the direct cause of the underdevelopment and, by extension, the reliance on these educational quotas.
Which brings us full circle back to the policy implications. The XDP argues that the entire rationale for the quota system, which is basically a form of affirmative action for historical marginalization,
has expired. The Constitution defined mechanisms like the Equalization Fund and the sharing of the CDF precisely to bring parity.
So the question for the national conversation becomes, after 13 years and these colossal sums of money, is any county still genuinely marginalized to the point where educational affirmative action has to override the merit of a student who scored 71 out of 72?
Many policy experts would argue that devolution was intended to shift that responsibility for institutional development to the local level.
The XDP's conclusion is forceful, and he says it demands a national conversation.
All national schools should be available to all Kenyan children purely on merit. He sees this two-standards approach as fundamentally unfair and illogical.
One standard for students from areas that have received billions, and another for students from areas that have actually invested those funds.
Exactly. He's essentially demanding self-determination under devolution. He concludes by telling the NE leaders, and this is a quote, to leave his Lee and South and go to North Kenya and develop institutions.
So if you want your children to attend a top-tier national school, the funds were provided for you to build the equivalent Alliance High School of Mandera.
And failing to do so, allegedly due to mismanagement, should not grant you a continued right to dilute the national merit standard.
It radically shifts the focus of the policy debate from historical victimhood to contemporary accountability.
And it places the responsibility squarely on those local leaders to explain the gap between the funding they received and the development outcomes we see.
So this debate over merit, it naturally flows into this fierce critique of the mechanism that's currently used for school placement.
Right, and this is where the XDP identifies the specific bureaucratic failure that he thinks creates all the problems we've been talking about. He argues the current centralized system has just failed spectacularly.
The source notes that the placement of children has been consolidated dramatically at Jogu House,
which is the common term for the Ministry of Education headquarters in Nairobi.
And this centralized system completely replaced a previous mechanism that, while maybe less high-tech, relied very heavily on local knowledge and professional consensus.
Yes, and let's detail that former system, because the XDP presents it as a model of practical, localized governance.
He recalls that principals, the people who actually understand school capacity and logistics, they would gather, often at the Kenya Science Teachers College.
And they would review the applicant lists, they would agree on the cutoff points, and they would place children based on a nuanced understanding of local geography and demand.
It's a decentralized system that used professional, on-the-ground judgment.
And the XDP argues that the current centralization, which is managed by bureaucrats who are totally removed from local realities, has brought about a massive crisis and mess.
He says these bureaucrats at Jogu House, they just lack the capacity, the local context, and the professional distance needed to place kids correctly.
And this centralization has led to some specific and really devastating failures, as detailed in the source.
First, the XDP alleges that this system introduces opportunities for corruption.
Because you have non-accountable bureaucrats making these critical placement decisions, potentially based on influence rather than merit.
But the most significant impact on the average parent is what the source calls the distance crisis.
Just imagine the absurdity of this. Placing a child in a day school that's located 200 or even 300 kilometers away from their home.
The XDP gives this visceral explanation of the human and the financial cost. If a 13-year-old girl is placed in a day school hundreds of kilometers away.
Which is supposed to be the affordable option.
Exactly. The parents are then forced to rent accommodation for that child far from home, turning a day school choice into a boarding school financial nightmare.
And suddenly, parents are forced to spend thousands of shillings on rent, food, and security. It shatters family budgets and just disrupts the child's stability.
And the sheer geographic absurdity of it all just confirms the bureaucratic disconnect at Jogu House.
Right. The XDP highlights the ridiculous situation where a child who lives in Machakos has been admitted to a day school in Kerichu.
It's just unworkable. The whole purpose of a day school is to be local, allowing the student to walk or take short trips home every day.
And the XDP argues that the old system enforced this crucial rule, that day school placement should be within a walking distance of just 3, 4, maybe 5 kilometers.
The principals enforce this based on their understanding of the local catchment area. The current centralized system, by contrast, he calls it unnecessary and not right.
He says it creates a crisis of non-magnitude and is a direct consequence of bureaucrats prioritizing data entry over human reality.
Okay, so this comprehensive critique of educational failure and financial mismanagement, it's the foundation for the final part of the XDP's defense.
Why he feels he must speak out, despite all the political attacks against him.
He's responding directly to the suggestion that he should just stay silent or, restrict his commentary to his immediate constituency.
And he provides a really clear rationale for his continued public engagement, even though he's been removed from the deputy presidency.
First, he asserts his continued democratic legitimacy. He says, I am an elected leader and the people elected me. No one has taken that mandate away.
And second, and this is much more pointed, he targets the local elected representatives from the Mount Kenya region, the area he represents, with a very serious accusation.
He alleges these MPs and senators have been effectively bought by William R., referencing a key political figure, and are now completely silent.
They hear no evil, see no evil, which he says creates this profound leadership vacuum that forces him to step in and speak.
He even highlights a very specific example in his home region of Nyeri to ground this claim in economic reality.
Right. He mentions that residents came to him with grave concerns about an alleged plan by Newman and William R. to relocate the Kianjo Police College.
An institution developed by the colonialists.
And they want to move it to Baringo and West Pokot.
This relocation threat is not minor. It has immediate economic consequences for the people there.
The XDP points out that if the college is relocated, the numerous local suppliers of foodstuffs, fresh produce, and other essentials to the college would suddenly be rendered out of business.
And the local MPs and senators who should be defending these jobs and these businesses are allegedly quiet.
Which is why the XDP, as a former national figure who still holds a local elected mandate, feels compelled to speak. This is his justification for his continued political relevance.
He speaks where others have been silenced or bought.
Finally, he addresses the tribalist accusations head-on. He's trying to expose what he views as just political hypocrisy.
He asserts that he's simply a responsible leader speaking for the people who elected and trust him, whether they are parents concerned about school placement or rice farmers concerned about subsidies.
And he draws this really clear distinction. He says, when Western leaders speak passionately for their people, or when Northeastern leaders speak for their community, especially when one person is touched and the whole community is up in arms.
Nobody calls them tribal, they're just labeled as community representatives.
Yet, when the XDP advocates for a specific economic constituency, like the 150,000 rice farmers in Moa who rely on government support, he is immediately labeled a tribalist.
He reaffirms his commitment to his political platform. He notes that the slogan of his political party is listening to the ground.
And he stresses that he will not be intimidated or silenced, and he must continue to speak for the people who seek him out.
So the core message synthesized here is powerful. The crisis in placement, the massive funding mismanagement in the NE, and the silence of local leaders in Mount Kenya.
They're all interconnected national issues that demand a fearless national conversation, especially concerning the 13-year necessity of the quota system.
It's an incredibly effective rhetorical strategy. He transforms a regional complaint about school quotas into a national mandate to discuss accountability, merit, and the successful or failed implementation of devolution's promise.
A promise to bring equitable development across all of Kenya.
This deep dive has been, it's been illuminating. It's dense with data and fraught with political significance.
It really has.
We've moved from that high-stakes confrontation sparked by grade 10 placements all the way to a granular analysis of billions of shillings, over 119 billion shillings allocated to Mandera alone, and contrasted that with claims of underdeveloped institutions.
We detailed the systemic failures of the centralized placement system at Jogu House, which creates this geographic absurdity and real financial hardship for parents.
And we wrestled with the fundamental debate over merit versus quotas, 13 years into Kenya's bold experiment with devolution.
And that final message from the XDP to the Northeastern leaders to leave his Lee and South and go to North Kenya and develop institutions, that really is the lasting challenge of this debate.
It raises an important overarching question for every Kenyan citizen who is observing local governance.
In a decentralized Kenya, where resources are, at least in theory, plentiful, how can citizens effectively demand accountability and institutional development from local leaders who may prioritize personal or non-regional interests?
Right. What effective mechanisms, beyond relying on dramatic national political pressure, need to be strengthened at the county level
to ensure that these billions actually translate into functional, beautiful institutions that make the quota system itself obsolete?
So what does this all mean for you? Understanding the flow of money, why centralization failed, and what the real definition of marginalization should be in modern Kenya? Well, it empowers you to demand better governance and a fairer system for your children. The knowledge is the first step toward action.
I trust you're enjoying this deep dive and learning a lot. Understanding these policy nuances is just vital for holding all leaders, both national and county, accountable.
For more great resources, we invite you to visit wantemnotum.com. We strongly encourage you to download the free e-resource. Kenya's Gen Z must reclaim their power. It's available as an ebook and an audio format. This is a crucial resource for understanding the political landscape and mobilizing positive change.
Again, it is free.
Go to wantemnotum.com, create an account, and download it. Take action. Freedom never comes easy. What will you do?
And don't forget, we have more free downloads and resources, or you can buy resources, available at https://beacons.aakk2020 buy books. If you want to join the national conversation, you can change Kenya by starting to comment and post your thoughts. Create your account and start posting your comments at https://wantemnotum.com.
Follow us and engage with the community on our Facebook page. That's https://www.facebook.com/wantyampitukapaumoja. And remember, you can listen to and enjoy the KWM podcast, The Deep Dive, anywhere at home, office, or on the road, in private cars, buses, or matatus. https://podcast.kenya.wantemnotummovement-kwm.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the complex intersection of education, devolution, and accountability.
We'll see you next time.